Welcome adventurers and fellow world builders. My name is Yadro and this is Yadro Gaming. Today we're diving into one of my favorite DM tools for building out a campaign in a region, and that's playing the game called the Quiet Year. In this game we're going to be setting up a home base and the region around it, as well as a bunch of other potential settlements that your people could be interacting with. Whether you're a seasoned DM or you're rather new to the hobby, the Quiet Year is a great way for you to establish a world and a setting that your players are going to instantly be attached to and are going to be thrilled to explore. If you're not familiar with The Quiet Year, it was developed by Avery Alder, and in this game you're going to be playing within a settlement that basically just survived some kind of catastrophe. You can make that whatever you want. And now they're trying to band together to kind of rebuild their little settlement or society with this relative year of peace before the incoming winter comes and there's some kind of inciting event that affects the settlement itself. Now, as I go through the discussion of how to play the Quiet Year, keep in mind that all of this is subject to change based on your needs as a DM. If you want to tweak anything or any of the questions within the game, feel free to do so to make it adapt to your world and your players. The first step of this game is to basically talk with your players and sit down as a group to decide what kind of a region are you going to be playing in. The general layout of the region is going to be important based on what kind of topography is there, what the landscape looks like, the environment. All things like that are going to play an important role about what initially gets placed onto the map. Keep in mind that during this initial phase, you're just putting some basic landmarks on the map and not to get too bogged down too much with the details. We're going to build out a lot more as the game progresses, so just get on a couple key features onto the map that you know kind of lay out some different areas for the players to explore, and we'll expand on them later. In the Quiet Year, each turn, a player is going to draw a card, and that's going to represent 1 week in the world. The game starts off in the spring, and you'll work your way through each season until you end up drawing the last card in the winter. Each corresponding card that's drawn by the players correlates to a question or two that you'll have within the Quiet Year handbook, that you'll pose those questions to the players and have them answer it however they like. It's also a good idea before the game gets started to kind of address the tone of whatever game you're going to be playing, because some people can get kind of wild with their answers and take you down a path that you might not have foreseen or you might not want to play for a long-term campaign. So getting a tone right early on will help kind of settle everyone's answers in initially until they get a little bit more to build off of. These are the two most important things that I would have for my players at the ready. I would have these printed out for each player. You don't need the before playing card to go to everyone, but you will need what they can do each week in their actions. It's a really simple game when you look at it up front, but really all you need to worry about is each turn they're going to draw a card, they're going to get told a question and then interpret it. You'll reduce all project dice after they do that, and then they get to take an action unless something on the card says otherwise. They're either going to discover something new, hold a discussion, or start a project, and all that is explained really thoroughly in the rulebook. The game itself includes 3 things. You're going to be discovering something new, holding a discussion, or starting a project. Those are the 3 different actions you can take on your turn. Discover something new and starting projects are going to be the 2 biggest ones that your players are going to use. I tend to shy away a little bit from holding a discussion because a lot of times the players try to role play as their character or as an NPC that they want to bring in. And a little bit of that is okay, but when you start to have a lot of discussions, the players can really go off on tangents and burn a lot of time. Start to finish, this normally takes 2.5 to 4 hours to complete, so you might have to break it up over 2 sessions, especially the first time you try to play. So keep that in mind as you're going through with the actual Quiet Year itself. I didn't have much of a use for contempt, other than if players felt really slighted, they could take contempt, and we kind of use that as a general feeling of the community of how much unrest there was and how much turmoil there was within the settlement. The greater that it got, obviously the more problems that there were and the less trusting people were of one another. As you go through the questions of the Quiet Year itself, I would review them before you actually go through the game with your players, just so you can see what kind of questions are going to be asked. Some of them may not apply or just may not be interesting to you on the direction you want to go, and feel free to replace some of them to have questions of your own that you want to ask, or just split up 2 of the lines. So if you like 2 questions that are on the same number of a card, just delete one somewhere else and just swing the second question onto another one so a player only has 1 option. The players probably won't even know. As you go through the season and you get to the winter, you'll see that it says the king. Whenever that one is drawn, the Frost Shepherds have arrived and the game is over. They don't have to be the Frost Shepherds. You can give them another name, you can give it another event, or just tell your players when the king is drawn, that's the end of the game, and we'll call it right there. Some of the cards may say something like, an omen appears in the sky. What does it mean? Now your players can run with that and take it in whatever direction they want. Maybe in their world there's a blood red comet or something that streaks across the sky. Now obviously that's a great plot hook that we can build into the campaign, but you're going to find a lot of moments like that that your players are going to input into the game that you're then able to twist and manipulate as a DM later on. Every decision that your players are going to make is going to add a little bit more depth and a few more layers to the story that you're building. Keep that in mind and try not to get too bogged down with each little detail, but look for the connections that are made every week as your players play off one another and add new ideas to the map. One of the best things about the Quiet Year is how it kind of naturally builds these factions and conflicts within the world that you're building. While the game does focus kind of on one settlement that you're all building out of, keep in mind that you can adapt this to have multiple settlements, as I'm going to demonstrate in the game that I'm running. You can bounce these questions based on any settlement that you want, so you can kind of build connections between places, or just build kind of different cultures within the settlements that you're discussing. For that prompt we discussed earlier with a blood red comet in the sky, maybe that created a cultist group in another settlement, or deep in the underbelly of the settlement that you're starting off in. That's a great first adventure hook that you could draw your players into that'll stick in the back of their minds early. Maybe another player will take that idea of this blood red comet and these cultists and create a group of mage slayers or something that want to take out these cultists. Maybe that brings in clerics or paladins into the campaign that have an interest in stopping these cultists because they did something to one of their family members. All of this can be basically built off of that one prompt about this comet or this omen that they saw in the sky. And that's one of my favorite parts about the Quiet Year. By the end of the game, you'll most likely have 3 or 4 of these factions that you'll be able to pull off of later. Just make notes off to the side as the DM that's running the next game of things that catch your interest, and then have the players submit their notes at the end about things that they found interesting while they played the game. Once the game is completed, you'll have a whole bunch of different plot threads out there for your players to take interest in. Most likely, while your players are going through the game, they're going to find a couple different places or things that really grabbed their attention, and they're going to be able to weave into their backstories. That's going to instantly put them immediately into your game world that you're building, and it's going to make everything feel a lot more organic. I typically tell my players, try to keep your backstories and your character very wide open and nebulous until we get a chance to finish the Quiet Year, because odds are you're going to find something interesting to build your character off of there. By the end of your playthrough of the Quiet Year, you're going to have a really nice detailed map of a bunch of different locations and points of interest that your players are going to get to explore. Now, since these players were the ones that actually put them onto the map, you're going to find that they're very invested in some of the things that they put on there. Some of them may have even injected ideas that they had an idea for in their backstories, and now they have a place to put it on the campaign. Using the Quiet Year to build your homebrew D&D or TTRPG world is a great resource to get your creative juices flowing a little bit, and a great way to pull your players into the world that you're building. Yeah, you could go through and you could do all of this yourself, and you could develop all the towns and all the topography, what kind of interesting things are in there in the region. But having your players be a part of that collaborative building process just pulls everybody in and helps it feel a lot more collaborative and gives everybody a little bit of ownership in the game that they're playing. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you consider using the Quiet Year in your next game that you run, or just play the game for fun. It's a great way to get to know people a little bit better, see how they think and view things, and it's a great way to build out a backstory for a character as well. I'll see you in the next video, and remember, why be a player when you can be a god?